Hello, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're at. This is Connie Pheiff, and you are listening to the Connie Pheiff Show. Now, if you've been around a while, y'all know that I am known as the Unstoppable Diva. But what I want to just share with you really quick, we got our latest stats and impressions every month. Like we are hitting, between the 5-6 million point of impressions of people listening to our show every month. So I want to thank you. I really want to truly thank you from the bottom of my heart because I know that sharing is caring. So please continue sharing the program. And I love listening to you. I love listening to our loyal listeners and hearing from you. So send in a note if there's somebody that you want to hear about, know about. Let me know. I'll be glad to wrangle them in here so we can learn more about them as well. And you could also learn more about many of the talent that we represent at talentconcierge.co. And don't be surprised, from time to time I do have them on as co-hosts as well. So if you see somebody on there and say, hey, I want to hear more from him, Jarek Robbins, Kevin E. West, or today's guest as well. And I'm going to get to that right now. So our guest today, she's an author. She's a spiritual intuitive, a media, and a channel. Her book, Walking Between Worlds, it reads like a novel, really worthy of a TV miniseries. Now, from childhood to adulthood, she's really repressed that traumatic memories that she has, and I know a lot of our listeners could relate to that. Whether you're an entrepreneur, corporate executives, we all have that story. We all have that trauma. But the question is, what do you do? How do you deal with that? And our guest today, she really, she was, in a place of despair, but she learned how to take that transcendence and the healing, and that all came through her reliving the terror of her past through hypnotic regression. So I really want to, let me bring her right on right now. Let me welcome to the Connie Pheiff Show, Athena Dimitrious. And Athena, welcome to the Connie Pheiff Show.
Oh, Connie, thank you so much. I really am looking forward to spending some time with you and hopefully touching the hearts and spirits of those that might glean something from our, conversation and communication today.
Great. Now, and when I was looking at some of your material, your background, I mean, you talked about some traumatic memories as a child, and as I had mentioned, I coach executives, corporate executives, um, you know, high income earning entrepreneurs. And it's funny, I coach on business. I that's what I do. It's all about business and how you create that sustainable business. How do you take that success that you've had and take that to the next level? But we always go into the conversation, a personal conversation of something that they've had to overcome, challenges that they've had, as a child. And I'm talking men and women. I'm not,
Absolutely.
it's both sexes,
Yes.
it's not just one. And of course we have all of the Me Too that's been really coming out. And for me, we move beyond Me Too.
Yes.
Yes, there is something traumatic, and how do you bring that out? And this is something that I found in your material, in your book. And you took 20 years to write your book.
Oh, actually a little more.
Okay.
Yes, actually it was a little bit longer. But if I can do a little backstory, that may...
Sure.
Is that good?
Yes.
Okay, that may be of
Yes.
assistance here. My father was a Greek immigrant, and he was, I think he was illiterate. Really, he could
Mm,
barely sign his name. He
okay.
had a lot of difficulty. He really
Mhm.
wasn't even able to read. But he had a uncle, or excuse me, his
Mhm.
brother was a Greek shipping tycoon, and my father inherited all this money from my uncle,
Okay.
and which would be worth millions. And he didn't understand the value of money.
Mm,
My mother caught him burning stocks and bonds in the fireplace
Oh my
because he
gosh.
thought they were worthless pieces of paper.
Mm-hmm.
And he was an alcoholic and he was a compulsive gambler, so he lost it all of it. And it would have been again up and worth millions.
Right.
And what had transpired was that my mother couldn't cope and she began drinking. And when my father left, she took in a boarder
Mm-hmm.
and he lived in the root cellar of our basement like a troll. So over a period of a year, I was repeatedly raped. And
Oh dear.
I suppressed the memories as,
Mm-hmm.
a child or a kid would do. What else do you do with it?
Right.
And I became very suicidal. I became very deeply melancholy, and it was like walking through a fog. It was like living in a fog. I had a very specific memory that was very, very clear up to a certain point. But then when the rape would take place, then it turned to snow like on a television screen.
Mm-hmm.
And my brothers and sisters were always, they would remember things about our childhood I just wouldn't.
Okay.
So in my teenage years, uh, I eventually became a workaholic. And that's where I put that discomfort. I went to work for Revlon and
Okay.
I ended up somewhat climbing the corporate ladder.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was transferred to Los Angeles. But my relationships were really pretty much a wreck. I
Mm.
was very deeply suicidal again and very melancholy, but I didn't understand the source of it. But the one place where I was very successful was work. I felt a great level of success at work.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had a child when I was 17, and that was out of wedlock. That was a social taboo back
Mm.
then, but I kept
Right.
her. And then I was transferred to Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And while in Los Angeles, 1979, and I just I had pushed everybody away, Connie. I
Mm-hmm.
just couldn't let anybody close. And all of that was from the trauma, not understanding the effect that it was having and the devastation really on
Now,
my
I just
personal
want you
life.
to know I'm smiling
Uh-huh.
because we have our path is a mirror of each other.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
that's why I'm smiling.
Oh, bless your heart.
Without I didn't have the child at 17 though. So not
Oh my gosh.
but everything else. So I understand what you're saying. You threw yourself into your work. I did the exact same thing.
Oh my God. I'd put off vacations to work. And
Yes.
it was
Mhm.
always, how can I get to the next level? How can I get
Right.
better from here?
Right.
Because it was the only area, again,
Right.
that I felt success.
Relationships were just
Oh,
forget
they were a
forget
disaster.
forget that.
I would date someone for 3 months and
Yeah.
and then end it. It was that three
Yeah.
month thing, and oh, they want a commitment or they want to get too close. I don't think
Yeah.
they
You're
want to see
like,
each other
yeah,
too much. Step
that's not
down
happening
next,
here.
right?
In my
So,
20s, my theme became sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and it was
oh
like,
yeah,
I can go away. I can go
that's
away.
that's it.
Yeah.
Definitely. So
Mhm.
it was that way.
Mhm.
But as I was promoted with
Mhm.
Revlon, and then I was put in a position that I didn't like. My dream was
Mhm.
always to be a makeup artist in the film industry. That was
Okay.
where my joy was. Actually,
Right.
where that's where I wanted to wind up, basically.
Okay.
And so what happened, I had a series of three events that literally brought me to my knees in 1979.
Mm.
And it was one of those defining moments in my life
Okay.
where I had to look at what I was creating,
Yeah.
the effect it was having on my world, which
Mhm.
was very chaotic. I felt like I was trying to stand erect on a lake bed of frozen ice.
Mm.
It was hard to stay present. I was either
Okay.
living in the future or living in the past
Right.
or just focused on work, and that was it. So I was very, very miserable in my personal life. And I had what I call a spiritual awakening, 1979. And what happened was that I had never believed, and I never believed in God. I really felt that he must have been a real creep for letting
That
the
happened.
well, and
Mm-hmm.
letting the level of poverty. I mean, God, there was a point where we were burning shoes and leaves to stay warm, and
Mm-hmm.
our landlord had set our house on fire and poisoned our dog. It was like a bad country record.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, and I just thought that life was so painful. And when that experience happened, Connie, I had this vision. It was so fascinating because it was like I was shown almost like a pond of filthy, sludgy mud on one hand. And
Mm-hmm.
when I understood, it was because of how I was pushing people away and how life really had no choice but to come back with a like experience for me. It was the only
Mm-hmm.
way I was going to understand the cause of what I was doing and the effect.
Right.
And when I had that epiphany and I said, oh my God, I understand, then that filthy pool turned crystalline clear.
Mm.
At that exact moment, there was a golden ray that came into my front room and dusted everything with gold. I didn't know where that ray came from.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in my house, again, was dusted with gold. It, I just didn't know what was happening. I felt like my whole world was being turned upside down.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing made sense to me. And my daughter didn't want to live with me anymore. She
Mm-hmm.
wanted to move away. I had to let her do that and go live with a friend because I knew in my heart it was the right thing to do. And I found myself sobbing myself to sleep. And I found myself climbing into another dimension. It was into another dimension, just as real as me sitting here having this conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw my father, who had been dead for 17 years.
Okay.
And he came up and he held me. And there was all of this light and this love that flowed from his heart through mine. And when I came back into, it was very healing. There was such peace in his eyes. And when I came back into the body, I woke
Mm-hmm.
up on the bed sobbing. But I thought, where was that I went?
Right.
And anyway, that was a defining moment. And then what happened after that, Connie, was that all these psychic experiences and the
Mm-hmm.
paranormal began almost tumbling over each other at that point in time. And I was also given 3 books that literally changed my life. And it made sense out of everything I had been going through. And they were the Ascended Master Teachings from Saint Germain. And I began to apply the meditation
Mm-hmm.
morning, noon, night, whatever I needed to do, I was willing to do to shift and to create some change. And then, of course, that did lead eventually to healing and doing some
Mm-hmm.
very conscious work with a really qualified therapist.
Okay.
So I made
Okay.
the decision at that point to go back and to explore the trauma
Mm-hmm. And
because I
what was
felt,
causing it?
well, what was causing it, but
Yeah.
what was very wise was something told me to record those sessions way
Okay.
back then. So those transcripts are in my book, Walking Between Worlds. They're
Okay.
actually taken from there.
So your book, the one thing I was looking at, your book has been compared to Jeanette Wall's The Glass Castle.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the comparison between the two?
Well, poverty, most likely. I mean, the
Okay.
absolute depth of poverty, and her mother. There
Mm-hmm.
was, there was something about her mother, for sure, that reminded me of my mother. And people had read that and said that it reminded them of my life.
Okay.
And also, I think that Jeanette Wall has and had, and I'm going to say has, a flame, an internal flame
Mm,
within her that just ignited to be able to climb out of that level of poverty.
okay.
and to be able to express herself, certainly
Mm-hmm.
as a writer. But yes, it's definitely been compared to that by people who've read the book.
Mm-hmm. So what because I was looking at like what's that nugget, what's that learning that we can give our listeners. And the one thing that I've read and seen you saying that Earth it's a school,
Yes,
and all of our experiences are the lessons that we live. And so and it's a journey, or as your
yes.
therapist has said, it's an odyssey. But what I mean, how do so many people, let me rephrase that,
Okay.
so many people go in this path through life, this journey, and they have the pain, they have something that happened to them, but they don't take that and they don't look at that to be their teacher. What advice can you give our listeners to really take a look at what that pain is and allow that
To
to be their
transpire.
right?
Okay.
Mhm.
And let me elaborate on that. That's a nice loaded question, but it's a terrific one because it will give people something to work with, hopefully.
Okay.
When I made the decision to go back and to do that kind of work, I really threw myself into it. And so we did use hypnosis, but it's a process.
Mm.
It's not something you're going to download and do something theoretically. I thought, okay, I'll go
Mhm.
in and get hypnotized once,
Okay.
by this qualified therapist, and that'll do it. But it didn't work
Mhm.
that way. I needed to go back and to really explore the decisions that I made, because what I learned was that the decisions that I made as a child
Okay.
that affected me was the perceptions were from my child's experience,
Okay.
and it affected the way I saw people,
Yeah.
events, and people. Didn't work as an
Mhm.
adult because it was like looking through glasses that had butter smeared on them.
Mhm.
That's the way I look at it. And so I really began to understand that it was a process. And the process is one that, yeah, you walk through some fire to heal,
Right.
but you're here, you've survived. And so it's going
Mhm.
back and wanting more out of life and cleaning it up. And so the it, there's a lot of there's a lot of crying that will happen. You can
Yeah.
tap into that level of rage, that anger. I'm validating that for your listening audience. That's part of the journey,
Yeah.
and don't
Mhm.
make it less than that. It's part of the journey, but that will eventually move into, it can move into grief and some sadness and some loss. But each part of the journey needs to have its equal time and its equal
Mhm.
space. And then eventually to move into, for me, it was moving into the place where I wanted to look at victimhood,
Mm.
because I felt like as long as I was feeling victimized, and boy, there
Right.
was a time I wanted to shout it from the mountains. I
Right.
really did.
Mhm.
And there's a really wise soul who said, if you're going to feel as a victim, own it so it doesn't own you. So if you're going to
Yeah.
feel like a victim, do a good job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
So,
I know what you mean.
yes. And so when I began to look at that really closely, it was like, what would I have if I didn't have this to blame?
Mhm.
My reactions, my lack of response, anything else at this stage of my life. And I thought, you know what, that doesn't work for me. So I was
Right.
able to really cross the bridge. I can't speak for other people. It's a personal journey, but this is just
Yes.
what I did. And it was transforming. It
Mhm.
freed me in ways I can't even begin to share. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I fully get where you were at. And like I said, listening to you, I'm like, wow, done it, done it, done it. But
yeah,
I remember people coming to me. My sister's mother-in-law came to me, and her sister-in-law had struggled with her divorce, and then she became an alcoholic. And there was this one situation after another, and she came to me and she said, you were able to pull yourself around, and look at you today.
yes,
She hasn't been able to do any of that. So at least you and myself, we cemented ourselves in our career, so that so we did have that where, like in her instance, she didn't even do that. I mean, she couldn't do anything. And I just said to her mother, I said, you know what? I said, until she's ready to hear it, there is nothing anyone could say to her.
No, and that's so true, Connie. It's until
Hmm.
they're ready to hear it, or they desire or they want more. But
Yeah.
everything in me, even as a young child, knew that life was
Hmm.
not meant to be lived this with so much pain.
We always want it more, always want it more.
Yeah.
I know we can continue in this conversation, but I do need to cut you off. We do need to
Oh,
take a
yes.
break, and
Okay.
we'll come right back.
All right.
Okay, we're back, and you are listening to the Connie Pheiff Show, and our unstoppable guest today is Athena Dimitrious. And yeah, Athena is really sharing her life of being brave and making those choices, because it is a journey. Life is a journey, and we all go through stuff. So right now it's straight talk. So Athena, I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to go through them. But I wanted to say, and something that came to my mind as I was preparing for today, is that we cannot live a brave life ourselves without disappointing people in our life along the way, because many of them, if we're not aligned with that agenda and what they are doing, they're not going to be rooting for us. And you talked about being a victim, and that's where we have to say, you know what, it's not, we're not going to be that victim anymore. And we're
Right.
not going to allow other people to also disappoint us. So that was one thing that I was thinking about as I wrote this, as I was preparing for this. So if you would finish this sentence for me:
Yes.
I am unstoppable because.
I am relentless in my pursuit for truth, of understanding who I am, why am I here, and what's it all about. I'm
Hmm,
unstoppable that way.
okay. To you, vulnerability is.
Oh, allowing people, for me, it's allowing people to touch me at times when I'm the most afraid, when I feel that they're going to see every flaw
Hmm,
I have, that they're going to think that I am not enough, that they're going to touch
hmm,
all of that. That's what vulnerability, and that's incidentally when I've grown the most, is when I've let people touch me in those spaces.
and. Mm,
And it's a hard one,
mm-hmm,
because we always, I can't speak for other people, but that the need to be in control, or
mm,
control situations, or have people think that you've got it all together, that you're
mm-hmm,
perfect, whatever, and that's the persona on that. But to strip that away, and at times even in group settings where I've done some workshops, when I've
mm-hmm,
had to really get out there and walk in the fire with that, that's when that's when I've really opened myself to vulnerability, and I was
mm.
very vulnerable in the healing process.
Yes, I bet. I
Yeah,
bet.
in that.
And I'm going to complete that a little bit more. And even, that need to please, or what,
Yes.
we call that disease, the disease to please.
Yeah.
So
Good one.
yeah, yeah,
Please.
right, right. So we all, then we want those truth tellers around us. We want people to be telling us, to get out of our own way.
Right.
So I mean, who's in your cabinet? Who's, those truth tellers around you, or do you even have one?
Oh, the truth tellers that will bring something to my attention. Is that?
Right. They'll be like,
Oh,
maybe,
sure.
look at that differently.
Yeah. No, my family, I think my sister is good for that. We'll do
Mm,
that.
okay.
And sometimes, really good friends, because I do like to get feedback. And
Yeah.
if I'm doing something that doesn't feel good,
Mm-hmm.
somebody else, I want to have the feedback so that I can become aware of that and I can make those changes.
Mm-hmm. Got
Because
it.
if it's coming up and bubbling up, it's coming up
Mm-hmm.
for a reason, to be looked at. And there's always those buttons, that can get
Yeah.
pushed, and that's always the truth one. And
Yeah.
this is a great little one, that pain is a teacher, and that our soul calls upon pain as a divine messenger to help
Mm-hmm.
us locate our resistance to this or to that in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the greatest tools ever given for me also was, if
Mm-hmm.
you're going through a really difficult time, divorce, getting fired from a job, whatever it is, breakup of a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
write about how it has served your soul. How has it
Mm-hmm.
served my soul, and how has
Right.
it helped me grow? And you'll transform it. Then you'll own it. It won't own you.
That's great, great advice, because what happens in situations like that, people will buy into the narrative.
Oh yeah.
That shame gremlin. And I know when
Ugh,
I lost my job as
ugh,
CEO with Girl Scouts, oh my God.
oh my gosh.
I was, yeah, that shame gremlin was all over here. And this was even after I did a lot of my work as well. So it will come back. It'll sneak its little nasty head back in.
Eh,
So yeah, and that negative speak and all of that. Yeah, yeah. It's really like what you just said. It's really, really an important message.
And people will survive, and if they
Mm,
are feeling the inner nudge to explore any kind of trauma, physical abuse, domestic violence, sexual abuse,
mhm,
male female bullying, whatever it is, my advice would be, seek a good qualified therapist.
mm.
Make sure that they're really, really qualified, because you
Yeah.
need someone that is able to help navigate that storm,
Mhm.
that you're a strong and beautiful soul, and your light's going to outshine any shadow. And the end result is you're going to feel more empowered. And then you don't have to carry it around with you.
Yeah.
I don't live in the past anymore, because it just
Right.
doesn't have the hold.
Right. Right. So if you could put anything on a T-shirt about you, what would it be?
Soul searcher. I guess that would be
Ooh,
it, soul searcher.
love
I was,
that.
I would say I was just born that way.
Okay.
And I, I was just born that way. I've been relentless, unstoppable, as you say, in the pursuit of that truth.
Well, Lady Gaga, I was born this way. That's my theme song.
Uh-huh.
Just I just want you to
Well,
but yeah, right. It is your truth. When you live bravely from that place of bravery,
uh-huh.
you are living your truth.
I believe
Mhm.
so. And
Mhm.
I also think that every kind, wonderful thing that
Mhm.
people do say or express, the love, the compassion, the care, the desire to, assist and help other people, to uplift
Mhm.
and not to degrade, all of those to me are the beautiful qualities of the divinity within, the
Yes.
divine master within.
Yes.
And everything else, the shame, the fear,
Mhm.
the judgment, those are all human qualities.
They are.
They're just human qualities.
So Athena, what's next? What do you plan? Where do you go from here?
Well, good question. Well, I've got a couple things that I'm thinking about. One is, because I'm now 72, I want to embrace this part of my journey.
Okay.
I want to embrace that. I don't,
Hmm.
I just want to embrace it more fully.
Beautiful.
And yes, and not necessarily get nipped, tucked, and
Mm.
pulled and stretched in every direction. And yeah, I'm walking slower, all of that, but there's a wisdom to the soul. And so
For
I want to
sure.
embrace that. And then another book, I'll be
Okay.
working working on that as well.
Well, where can our listeners find your wisdom?
Well, bless your heart. Uh, uh, they can find me on iamwithin.com. I am within.com.
Okay.
And they can contact me through there. I'm also a channel. And so I work with this wonderful character that I've worked with for over 28 years.
Okay.
And so I work with people, clients, that way. And,
Hmm.
they can always contact me for that. So that's
Okay.
my joy is inspiring people not to give up and to really, really look inward, connect with Master. And
Mm.
that's where the peace and tranquility comes from.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for being vulnerable and opening yourself up and sharing, and also for being unstoppable with your life.
Oh, bless your heart. Thank you so much,
You're
Connie.
welcome. Thank you for
Okay.
being here. Well, that's all we have for today. I love our family. I love our tribe, our members that continue to come back each week. And remember to share our show. And because we keep bringing just such amazing guests like we brought in today with Athena. So I'm Connie Pheiff. I'm a recovering C-suite executive myself. And we do continue to move ideas forward. And if you want to be advertising with the Connie Pheiff Show, just head on over to theconniefeifshow.com. And if you haven't checked us out yet, you want to check out Talent Concierge, and you can find more details on that at talentconcierge.co. That's CO. So I am going to leave you with this simple, powerful message, which is be strong. Things may be stormy now, the rivers may be high, but it will never rain forever. You're listening to the Connie Pheiff Show, and until next time, keep the passion of your life